Hey guys, Enigmatic Mr. L here, and I want to make a list of what I consider to be the worst maps in the main series of Fire Emblem games is. Um, Fire Emblem, as you probably have picked up, is my absolute favorite video game series, but that doesn't always mean that it's perfect. Sometimes it's just fun to rant and rave about the parts of something you dislike. And if anything, I think having like negative feedback about certain aspects while still maintaining like that the overall quality is good speaks volumes of just how well executed the good parts are. So before we get into the list, I'm just going to cover some ground rules for it. So my rule set is I will not be covering Gaiden or otherwise optional chapters like through a route split. Now, it was a bit fair criticism. It's like someone said, well, even if a map is optional, if it's a terrible map, it's still terrible. But just having the option to not do it, uh, I think that is consideration why it's like most people will just skip it. Like even if you get very good reward for it, the very least the map is optional. Otherwise, definitely expect to see like chapter 24X from Thracia 776 here. I think that's when we have to like rescue Abel. That would definitely make the list. Another thing is no final boss maps. This is mostly just for adding for variety's sake, and also it's like final boss maps they can be very annoying, but they're also thematically fitting. Like if the final boss is giving you a lot of trouble, that does at the very least make sense in the context of the game. Otherwise, what would by far and away take the cake for worst map, in my opinion, is the final map of Fire Emblem Conquest, pictured here. Well, one, I'm not sure if that counts as a route split or not. If you count Fates as one game, it does, since it is optional. But then again, if you count Fates as one game, the only maps that could possibly be eligible are like the first like 5 maps, and none of them are that terrible. But even just counting Fire Emblem Conquest as one game, I'm not going to count the final boss. I will say briefly why I consider it to be the worst map in the entire series is there are ways you can just like non-cheese it, like not involving like some uh big brain like warp, like not warp, but like rescue strat, like that sort of thing. But in general, if you don't plan out your entire team like through the whole game, like preparing for this one specific fight, you're gonna have a bad time. Lastly, just kind of going along with like no final boss maps, just for like variety's sake. I'm only going to be including one map per game. I'm not just giving like 5 maps in one particular game series, one particular like, Fire Emblem entry. Just for no other reason, just because of variety's sake. With that said, let's just get on with the list. All right, starting out, I have the Tower of Black Winds from Fire Emblem Three Houses. A bit of backstory, my personal experience with Three Houses. I started with the Blue Lions route, then I did the Golden Deer route, then I was coming up to like the time skip in the Black Eagles route, did a backup save, copying save, do one for the Black Eagles route, one for the Church route. That's when Maddening mode got released in my playthrough, in my experience with the game. So okay, I'm just going to finish these two playthroughs I have on hard mode. I think I did Black Eagles and I finished with like Church route, and I was like, all right, hard mode. It was fun, and there were maybe a touch challenging moments here and there, but overall it was just too easy. And I was excited to try a higher difficulty mode. I did the Blue Lions route, did it on Maddening mode. I got up to here in chapter 5 of like Maddening mode, and that's when I realized that basically I wasn't having fun. Now, a lot of these problems might just have to do with like Maddening mode in general, but just in my personal experience, this is when I stopped playing Maddening mode. I just haven't looked back on it since then, like even all these like few years later. So just going into like this map, on hard mode, Gilbert, he might be slightly annoying. Maybe like he'll go in a position you don't want him to, but he's fine. He's whatever. On Maddening mode, you absolutely need to make sure he gets like killed off ASAP, or else he'll like draw in like the aggro of like all the enemies, and you're like the archers, and they'll all just start swarming you. And that's just like a problem I think in Maddening mode in general. Like green units, NPC units, they might not have been the most intelligent or the strongest, like that sort of thing. But compared to past entries, I think overall they were improvement. Then in like maddening mode, like a lot of them will just end up like dying in like turn 1 or 2, or if you're not, extremely careful, that sort of thing. But even ignoring that, like you kill off Gilbert, you try to progress. Once you start getting into like the northeastern like corner of the map, that's when you have to start dealing with like ambush spawns. If you try blocking them off, I think they have to just bypass it, or like they have the skill pass, or maybe like both, like poison. You try even like slogging through that, and it just becomes annoying. This one I just kind of stopped playing. Even ignoring Manning mode, this map is like the introduction to some of Three Houses. It's not the most challenging game if you're not playing a Manning mode, but doing things like saying like, okay, the objective of this map is to defeat the boss. Defeat the boss, think it's over. Nope. Now there's like a part 2. They like change up the rules on you, like that sort of thing. It's not the last time they do that. Overall, just not the worst thing in the world, but just had bad experience. That's why it cracks this list, but at the bottom. Okay, next I have Seashore Travels from Fire Emblem Engage. Right off the bat, I do want to say that I think there are maybe some more frustrating maps in the game. Like once you hit chapter like 21 through like 25 in Maddening, I think that's when like there's a big difficulty spike. There are 2 reasons why I'm including this map over like one of those. The first is that they are thematically fitting. Like these final few maps, like trying to destroy like the certain shards, like dealing with like powerful like enemies that have been haunting you for like the whole game, like finally defeating like the 4 hounds, that sort of thing. They are like thematically fitting rather than just kind of like random. You meet up with like Hortensia's retainers. There's that. There's also, even just purely from gameplay reasons, like one chapter aside, you have so many tools and resources at your disposal then, namely in the form of all the emblem rings. And yeah, it might not be the most interesting strategy in the world to like engage with Micaiah, rewarp, dance, like rewarp again, then like dance with Byleth and like defeat the enemy in like 1 or 2 turns, but it's still an option you have available to you. This map, you don't have as many resources. You're still like gathering up the emblem rings. You do have the general problem like the Soul Arc has, where you have limited deployment slots because Goldmere and Masato join you. Then there's also just other problems, like you have this corrupted worm enemy, and even on hard mode, you think like, oh, Erica joins. They have Masato with Erica joins. They have like an engage attack that's super effective on corrupted. It does not one-shot these monsters, even like on hard mode. Or if you see these like corrupted worm enemies and you're thinking, well, no, I'll just like forge like a worm slayer or something. It's called a worm slayer. It does not deal effective damage against the corrupted worm, which might be a problem about just Engage in general and its mechanics, but this is like your first introduction to it. Beyond that, you have the problems of just like enemy reinforcements come like partially through the map, can end up like swarming you. There's like a village you need to protect, but it's kind of like worthless. It's basically just like a stronger min staff. And of course, the biggest problem with this map is just the rising and lowering of the tides. It's not even something that happens like once after a certain number of turns, and you have to adjust that. They constantly rise, constantly fall. You're about to like move in, find poor positions, but you have to like deal with the rising tides and restricting movements. Or you think you're safe, and enemies far away, and the tide's lower. Now you're like vulnerable again. Not the most difficult map in the world, but it is just like annoying and frustrating. Okay, next I have Strange Lands from Path of Radiance. It was a tough choice between this map or that one bridge map with like the pitfalls. I think Blazing Knight did like a video like things Fire Emblem players never say. And he was like, wow, that map with pitfalls wasn't bullcrap at all. Or that map with boulders wasn't bullcrap at all. And that's basically my thoughts after playing both of them. In theory and on paper, the one with like pitfalls is worse, just because it's kind of like Fog of War, which we will get to in soon. You're just moving units on, they get stopped like dead in their tracks, and they're like immobilized for like a turn or 2. In practice, though, like just having like flying units like Jill, Har, like that sort of thing. In practice, I would say this map is worse. And again, like on paper, this map doesn't seem too bad. It's like, yes, your cavalry movements is restricted, and you would think that means, that gives your non-mounted units like a chance to shine. In practice, it just makes it more frustrating. You invested all these like time and resources into a lot of cavalry, good cavalry units like Tatiana, Oscar, Kyrian, Astrid, etc. And then their mobility is like so heavily restricted. And then enemy phase in general, Path of Radiance, is kind of long and annoying. And then you just have to watch all these boulders roll down, stopping every time they hit a unit, deal 10 damage. It's just a frustrating map. Not the most difficult one, but it is just kind of like frustrating. And next I have Victims of War from Fire Emblem Sacred Stones. This is the first Fog of War map on this list, and trust me, it will not be the last one. Many people look at Sacred Stones and they say the worst map is the Phantom Ship from Ephraim Route. First off, it's not doesn't fit the criteria for my list because it is part of a route split. You don't have to play it. And two, even if I could include it, I honestly think this map is worse. And that may just be because of my like first impressions, like that sort of thing. But playing the Phantom Ship for the first time, my memory might be foggy. Maybe it was like took 2 tries, not just one, but I think I cleared out my first try. And granted, I might have had like a lucky dodge or something here and there, but you get Seth, who's like Seth is continues to be really great in that map. You get a Dusel as well in like the map beforehand. It's still annoying, still frustrating, but manageable. The first time I played Sacred Stones, I got to this map on hard mode. I did not get the torch or torch staff, whatever it is, from like one of the villages in the previous map, and I was just like, oh, it's okay, I can do without it. I ended up like restarting my entire run after so many failed attempts. And even then, I think I had trouble with units dying, such as like Vanessa dying to an archer or something. This map is just frustrating for a number of reasons. I think a big reason is Seth has been like an indomitable force up until this point, and even he is like vulnerable here. The Fog of War map of all maps, because there's like one unit with like a halberdier or something like that, like axe that's super effective against cavalry. Even if it doesn't one shot him, it'll bring him to very low HP, and like a mage or something can finish him off, or vice versa. If he's already like been weakened by like a mage or something, then the halberdier guy can like instantly kill him. I've seen this happen in a run before. Even someone who wasn't like playing Sacred Stones for the first time, they lose Seth. It just feels bad. Beyond that, it's just some minor nitpicky things, which are kind of funny, but I don't know if they make the map like worse or not. It's the fact that like the village to the south, it only gives you like an antitoxin, and you try going for the village, and later playthroughs just realize the most optimal strategy is to like head north and just go east, like to defeat the boss instantly and just ignore the village. There's also the fact that if you save all the villagers, the reward is just an Orion's Bolt, which if you're planning on using Namie, you kind of are forced into saving the villagers. It's not that much an optional reward because there aren't any like practical ways to promote Namie otherwise. Yeah, you could use like it's like an Earth Seal, but there are other units being like competing for that. And then even if you're like not using Namie, you just get like an Orion's Bolt, which granted you can sell for 5,000 gold, but by itself it doesn't have any like real worth. Overall, just a frustrating map. Fog of War is frustrating. Dealing with that halberdier guide Seth is frustrating. Not the greatest map. All right, next I have Attack on Dolph Keep from Fire Emblem Gaiden / Fire Emblem Echo Shadows of Valentia, which is I think Act 4, like map 3 of Celica Route. I did consider including like I think it's called like Dead Man's Mire, which is like the first map in this act on Celica's route. Another frustrating map where you have to like deal through like the swamp that deals damage. This map just combines a lot of things that are just kind of frustrating about Gaiden and Shadows of Valentia. Just in general, it combines them into one map. You have limited movement because of the swamp, that damages you every turn. You can somewhat negate that through like rings or other items that like heal HP every turn, but in general, you're already relying on those items because you casting magic spells drains the user's health, and you're also still dealing with like other enemies in the swamp or lava or whatever it is. Even when you like get past that, get back to like to the main fort in the south, dealing with another big problem of Echo / Gaiden, which is just Cantors constantly summoning enemies. And this one, they actually summon like dragons, extremely powerful enemies that fly. And of course, there's the general low hit rates once you get past the swamp. I believe, I could be mistaken, this counts as an indoor section or like on ground, which just grants 20% avoid to everyone, just makes your hit rates very bad. So bad hit rates, Cantors, spawning dragons of all things, restricted movement that damages you. Overall, just not a fun time. Next, I have Beyond the Desert from Genealogy of the Holy War. This map, like the first time played through, I just had a lot of frustrations with it. And it's not just any one big thing, it's just a lot of little things. I think the biggest issue is you start off the map and you have Finn, Leaf, and Nana, or Janae, or whatever his name is, Nana's substitute. They have to defend the castle like to the south, separated from the rest of your army. And you don't need to defend this castle. It's not like your home castle where you get seized by an enemy, you lose the chapter. But in general, you want to protect it because I think keeping like castles undefeated by enemies nets you more gold at the end of the chapter. And you still want to at least protect your units. And depending on what you did with like Finn or how what items you gave Leaf, how you did Nana's inheritance, that can make this map a lot more difficult. Fortunately, I did not have Finn marry my first playthrough Genealogy of the Holy War. So it could have been worse, but just in general, I had so much trouble with it. I think eventually what I just did was send like Fee down to help them. In subsequent playthroughs, I haven't had as much trouble with this map. I don't even know why. Like I've seen someone just play through this map. They did like a infantry only one. They relied entirely on Leaf, and it was like fine. But you have that general problem, but the problems don't end there. A common recommended strategy for Genealogy of the Holy War is just have Seliph inherit the Paragon Ring, happen like solo or semi-solo Chapter 6, and he's ready for promotion at the start of Chapter 7. So I did that, and I've done that in my playthroughs. Then once he promotes, he gets the mount, and he doesn't even get to make the best use of it because his immediate starting terrain is like desert, which restricts his movement. So that's frustrating. Shannon and like Patty or Daisy join you, and even with the Balmung, Shannon, he faces low hit rates from like the Dark Mages, but he's not invincible. And there's a chance you can just like try to fight a few enemies, something could go wrong, and you just lose it, which maybe that's just part of the tension sort of deal, but it's kind of frustrating. And the boss or like of the first castle, he mentions that like he lost his long range tomb, so you go in to fight him, and then true Genealogy of the Holy War fashion, the turn that he finds is also the turn he gets to use it, and just out of the note, just like without a chance to like prepare or like engage yourself, you just can end up like sniping one of your enemies if you're not prepared for it. But then you seize that castle, and you head south towards the next one, fighting like I think it's like Ishtor. You have like bolting and like ballista, like that sort of thing. It's whatever. I think the final frustration of this map for me is, and maybe it's just like a personal playstyle sort of deal, but once you seize that like south, like western castle, two armies like start advancing. You have your army to like the southeast, which advances on you, and also towards like Leaf and Co. But also you have to deal with Eris joins you, but then the mercenaries like start attacking you from like that castle. What I want to do in this map is just to like head once I seize that castle that Ishtor was guarding, just head to the right, deal with those enemies, seize that castle, help Leaf, then go back up and seize the last castle. But you have to, once you seize that castle, you have to enter it with Eris to get your dancer. And maybe I am wrong on this, but just to play it safe, I think it's better to like seize that castle first, have Eris in to get the dancer, then head back. But that's not the way I want to do it. What I've ended up doing is I head to the right first, I head east, deal with all those enemies, but don't seize the castle. Head back up to deal with like the mercenaries, seize that castle, then head all the way back down to seize the one that was attacking Leaf and Co., which is just annoying and frustrating. I think what they could have just done is like once you seize the castle that Ishtor is joining, not have enemies start attacking like Leaf and Co. yet, but you have to head up, seize that castle, then you head down, so you don't have to do like as much backtracking. Next, I have the Bandits or the Thieves of Dacia from Thracia 776. So, the Fog of War in Thracia 776, it only applies to guided chapters, which I think is interesting because you do get some good rewards from those guided chapters. And it's like, how much bullcrap are you willing to endure to get those rewards? With one exception. This is the only chapter in Thracia 776 that isn't a guided chapter, but still has Fog of War. And of course, fitting, it's the worst chapter in the game, in my opinion, excluding guide chapters. Though that isn't the only reason. So in this map, you have like Soleil or Salem is the boss, and he has a sleep staff, which in this game has infinite range. And as long as your magic is higher than the opponent's magic, because magic and resistance are tied together in one, and has one stat in this game, it is a guaranteed to hit. So just like the map starts and like on turn 1 or 2, I'll just put one of you to sleep just instantly. There's nothing you can do about it. And at this point in the game, you don't have any like restore stats. So they're just sitting ducks for the entirety of the map. And he has 3 uses on it, then it breaks. Now, you can get around this like in repeat playthroughs if you know to like train up Sappy so she can use warp by this point, have her like promoted. You can just warp over to him, capture him, and then you get to keep the sleep stave. And that's an option, but most players aren't going to know to do it. And if they do, they might not have Sappy like straight trained up to like A-rank staves at this point. Even if you do it, it can be a little tricky because if you want to recruit him, you have to like capture him, hold on to him. You can't just like kill him because capturing lowers your stats. It can be a little tricky, take a few retries to do. Even like, just beyond that, you have like a turn limit in this map if you want the God chapter. Not the worst thing, but just an annoying, frustrating thing about this map is enemies don't drop items in this game. You have like one boss in here that has like a bridge key, but you have to like capture him for it. If you're just playing the first time, you don't like know, you might not pay attention. You might defeat him, and then if you don't have warp, and then you defeat that enemy that has the bridge key, and you don't have Kieran on you to like rescue and drag, you're soft lock, and you have to restart the whole map, which is just really frustrating. And on this, on top of all the things, just fog of war in general, you're looking at like a bad time. Next, I have Battle Before Dawn from Blazing Blade. You all knew this map was coming. It's a fog of war map. It's a defend map. A lot of Fire Emblem, quote-unquote, elitists don't like defend maps or survive maps because there's nothing you can do to like speed up the number of turns. That doesn't really affect me. I mean, I'm fine with that. Sometimes it can be challenging in their own right. But what is just frustrating is like in this map in particular, in terms of not just side objectives like additional items or something, it is the strongest push you see, like the main objectives for why you need to like advance your units. Like Zephiel, you need to protect him, and you need to absolutely book it to like reach him to protect him in time. You're dealing with Fog of War the whole time, and then of course you want to recruit Nino, who can in turn recruit Jafar, and that's like a time-sensitive mission as well. Just add insult to injury on this. Even if your strategy is perfectly executed, there is a small but very real chance that like Jafar can just die. I've heard of one suggestion to like fix this would be just like pull what they do for like Avil in the first 2 chapters of Thracia 776, where regardless of what the hit rates displayed are, even if as long as they're under 100, like 990 has a chance, he'll just automatically dodge lethal damage. Maybe give like a few more killing edges rather than just one as well. That would help. Even like if you do things right, Jafar doesn't die, you are really booking it on normal mode, like Hector normal mode or Eliwood normal mode, where it's like you're presumably like one of your first times playing the game, you're still like kind of out of practice. This map is tricky. Then on like the hard modes, especially Hector hard mode, the enemies are so strong that for many players, it isn't practical to split up your units in half. You just kind of book them all to one side and like presumably the right, recruit Nino, then recruit Jafar. Tried to reach Zephiel one time. There's also dealing with like Ursula with like a bolting. Very difficult, like push to the extreme, just not even like a fun, challenging way, but just kind of like this feels way too tight. Then you got like treasure you're trying to get, and it's good treasure, but like the window of opportunity is like so strict to get that before enemy thieves end up getting it, taking off with it. Sometimes you just kind of have to pick and choose which treasure do you want to protect. You have like things like the Delphi Shield, protects flyers from effective damage. It's very good. The Brave Lance, boots, more movement's always nice. And just really funny, just kind of rubs salt in the wound. You have the Rescue Staff of all things as one of the treasure chests, which is funny, but also just kind of insulting. Very frustrating map. Like I said, you can do everything right. Jafar or Nino could just like die anyway. Even beyond that, you are pushed to your absolute limits, but not just like in a fun way, just like the fog of war, not knowing what you're dealing with, having to like come in with like depending on what units you have like going into this. Just a very frustrating map. All right, next I have Arcadia from the Binding Blade. It was a tough choice between this and Chapter 21, which I think is just called the Binding Blade. The Binding Blade only has one big problem that's like kind of emblematic of a Binding Blade as a whole, just ambush spawns. And if you thought they were bad before in Chapter 21, they just get cranked like so much even more evil. But that is the only big problem map, which is certainly a big problem. Arcadia just has a little bit of like all sorts of negative kinds of problems. So in Arcadia, you have Fog of War, which just by itself is just a huge annoyance, and other things as well. I've seen defenses of this map, and I think that if you look at the problems on an individual level, other than Fog of War, they're not too bad. Like I said, the defense is made that what has Fog of War, which is always just kind of annoying, always just kind of bullcrap. But hey, at the least, you have like possibly like 3 thieves on you at this point in the game. They can help with that vision. You have torches, you have like torch staves. Those help. There's restricted movement, but hey, you have mages that are immune to they're unrestricted by the terrain, and flyers are unrestricted. You have powerful enemies, like powerful Wyvern Rider enemies. It's like, yeah, but they're weak to bows, like you have Klein, or weak to wind magic. You have like a trained up Blue. There's that sort of thing. You have luck-based missions trying to find all the treasure, which their thieves can just instantly get the treasure. They're probably bringing them along anyway, just to help with like increased vision. Even beyond that, I think there's like a glitch or exploit you can have to guarantee the treasure. There's the fact that you're under a time limit, but general, especially if you like rescue Roy with like a flyer or something, generally the time limit isn't a problem. If you want the guide chapter, the boss is pretty annoying. You're constantly facing like shaky hit rates from him, against him. But it's like, yeah, that's just kind of a problem of Binding Blade in general. You have escort missions against Cecilia, who is actually a pretty solid unit. This is just a bad showing for her because she's like on a mount and like restricted movement map. But it's like you have this escort mission. You need to keep Sophie alive. You want the guiding chapter, and she's the only one that gets like a guiding ring at one point, like one section of the map. But it's like in general, I haven't had too much problem with keeping them alive. Cecilia gets hit with a sleep stave, but it wasn't her, probably someone else. The least Sophia is unrestrict my movement. She is a terrible unit made of tissue paper, but other than like maybe the Fog of War, it's generally easy to keep them safe. You have ambush spawns, like powerful axe-wielding enemies, like berserkers with a high crit chance, but they start far enough away from you, or far enough like where you are on the map, it'll take them a while to like catch up to you. Like I said, all of these problems individually, except maybe Fog of War, aren't too bad. But you just combine them all into one, you have a map where you're facing down extremely powerful enemies. You got ambush spawns like with berserkers, like crit chance. Your movement is restricted. You're forced under a time limit. You have like these luck-based missions, which even if you know the fact like, hey, thieves can get it, you can use an exploit, it's still something you need to look up a guide to get this like really good treasure. Escort mission with one unit that has like long-term potential that's bad in this map. One's just terrible in general. Can't see well, your movement's restricted, dealing with that luck-based mission, annoying boss. All of these things just add up, and it's not a fun map to play. I did do a hard mode Iron Man at Binding Blade, which ended up failing like in chapter 20 or so, because I accidentally got Roy in like the range of 2 long range, like ballista or something. I only noticed one of them. But in this map, even on hard mode, my first try, I managed to get all the treasure and kept everyone alive. And I managed to do it, but it's not something that's like fun or enjoyable. And last and least, I guess we have my number one most hated Fire Emblem map, excluding like guidance chapters or like final boss maps. We have A Reason to Fight from Radiant Dawn. I don't even know what to say or where to begin on this map. It has Fog of War, which if you've watched up to this point, you know my feelings on that. But that's far from the only problem in this map. You start out in Radiant Dawn, you have all these like mediocre units. You're like struggling to keep alive. Then you go to Valencia, for like a few chapters in part 2. Then you finally join the Grail Mercenaries in part 3. Even though units like Soren, Boyd, Oscar, they might have their individual problems, but they're still fine. They're still competent, especially compared to many members of the Dawn Brigade. And finally, like joining them again, and even beyond just like pure gameplay reasons, we played Path of Radiance first. You're more excited to see them. This is when you return to the Dawn Brigade, and you don't have like some of the powerful units you had in the first one, like Terranio. Of course, he hasn't been around a few chapters in Dawn Brigade. Raphael, the Quad Nancer, he's not there. Nalia's not there. This is just a part when you learn that if the recommended strategy for Radiant Dawn, the Dawn Brigade, is just to invest heavily into like 2 or so units, give or take one, rather than trade it up everyone equally, because then no one gains enough like EXP to really be competent, and that might go against like your better instinct the first time. You might want to train like a lot of units, but that will in turn make the game more difficult. Even if you like to train a few units, it's like Edward or with his like fairly low strength, or Nolan fairly low like speed, that sort of thing. They're going to have to struggle here because you're going up against Lagoos of all things, which aren't the best units for player phase, just because you have to do with the engager camp. But enemies, once they're transformed, they're very strong, and a lot of your units are going to have like trouble with them. It's especially prominent because like first time you're playing Radiant Dawn, you might like the end of the game of Radiant Dawn, you might have the Black Knight deal with most of the enemies, and then your unit's going to be like weaker still. This is kind of a rude awakening for that. Speaking of Black Knight, he does join like in turn like 5 or so, and I've heard his strategy. We just deploy Makai and Soth, have Soth rescue Makai, then once the Black Knight joins, just have him solo the map. I tried that once or twice. I couldn't get it to work. I couldn't get them to like hold out long enough. Soth just ended up dying. But even if I could get that to work, that would be a workaround for this chapter, but it's just delaying the problems because you start out, if you have that sort of issue, it's probably because your Dark Brigade is too weak. And then the Black Knight's just going to exasperate that further. They're not going to get experience from this. Just overall, Fog of War, Lagoos, not strong units at your disposal. The allied units you have help to an extent, but you don't directly control them. And sometimes they might do something like I saw in like a playthrough where a yellow moves out of the way to kill an enemy, but then it turns you left like Laura, someone exposed, and they die. Overall, this is one of the maps where if I think about replaying Radiant Dawn, I just remember like there are good maps in that game. I remember I have to like replay this one and like a few others. It's like Radiant Dawn, when it has bad maps, it has like some of the worst maps in the series, in my opinion. Maybe not the worst, but it's like some of the worst. Overall, really do not like this map. That's all I have to say about bad Fire Mill maps, Fog of War, and Ambush Spawns. Yeah, not a big fan. I don't like either of them. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a good day. And this is Enigmatic Mr. L signing out.